So Shabbat Shalom all.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We're going to talk again about waking up. This is wake up.
Oh,
So we're waking up to a lot of things. We're very
we are.
blessed to understand about this malcontent. And it's really embedded in a lot of things. So we as mankind have been given certain covenant promises. Dominion over the earth was given to Adam and Eve. The earth, therefore, became dependent upon mankind. Each covenant promise intricately involved Yahweh, Adam and Eve, and continues to involve all believers.
You're gonna have to hold it closer to you.
Closer.
Yeah.
Okay. So waking up involves claiming these covenants that have been made with mankind. We are mankind. We have been given dominion over all the earth. The birds of the air, the fish of the sea, all that walks or creeps over the earth, upon the earth. We claim multiplication and increase over the earth and all that is in it. And that is our responsibility. The Sabbath covenant between God and man gives us the authority to rest in God, always in communion with Him. We claim as believers an open doorway and gateway to the throne room of God, into the very holy of holies, to enjoy intimate communion with our Father and Jesus, as sons being trained in kingdom laws, ways, and days. Also, Jesus' empowerment to receive wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and discernment to make right and righteous decisions. He restores peace to our souls. And as our souls prosper, we prosper in all areas of our lives. We claim life without fear, insecurities, anxieties, or toil. We live free from revenge, vengeance, and vendetta. And you know, we ask God, our Heavenly Father, to forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. This vendetta and debts have the same ring to it. So we really do need to forgive debts so that we can get out of vendetta's way as well and release it. In the marriage covenant, we claim the promise of adoption into the family of God as part of our Father's increase. For in this covenant, mankind married into the God family. We claim the promise of protection over us and our families. Freedom from death, destruction, and debt through partnership with Jesus, receiving His report, His support, and the security that exists in this covenant. He carries the weight of all our problems as we lay them down to Him on the cross, 3 hours before sunset on the Sabbath. We also have the new moon every month to lay down past traumas, dreads, and hurts. And also malcontent and all of the 11 demons that are under that. In the Noachian covenant, we claim the promise of all mankind to come under the rainbow of God. He will never destroy the earth again with water. We claim that we reap 100-fold harvests and more of all righteous seed sown. As in the world's sin and all the evil of the past were washed away by the flood, we claim this favor for us and all our families. Through the Abrahamic covenant, promises made to Abraham, we claim favor, prosperity, and eternal inheritance of the earth. Through the circumcision covenant, we claim the circumcision of our hearts, completing the process of death of the old ways and the reality of the new life begun when we accepted Jesus. We claim the promises of joy, peace, and the grace of God overflowing in our lives, rolling away the reproach of Egypt, which is sin, giving us freedom from all bad habits. We are so blessed. There's so much out there for us to claim that God has put in the Bible. Exodus is just full of the promises of God. We claim the empowerment, the grace to keep the old covenant that God made with Israel on Mount Sinai that comprise the 10 Commandments. Thus says the Eternal, you shall have no other gods before me. And that means all those demons that attack us, that we have a way of hanging on to when we don't want them and we don't know they're there. And when we finally realize they're there, we have to start working on releasing them. You shall not make for yourself an idol. You shall not misuse the name of the Eternal your God. Remember to keep the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. Honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony, and you shall not covet. These 10 commandments have been given to us to take us out of death's hand. Exodus 19:5. Now therefore, if you obey my voice, says the Eternal, and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession out of all peoples. Indeed, the whole earth is mine, but you shall be for me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. He is awakening us to accept him and walk in his covenants. He means only good for us. Then we have the Davidic covenant. As David was king, we are kings with Jesus. And we claim the rights and responsibilities of kings on this earth. We receive the right to use the scepter of the righteousness of Jesus for our defense from all enemy tactics. And we do that regularly on the prayer calls. The 9th covenant is the new covenant of redemption through Jesus' shed blood. We accept Jesus and promise to obey him, receiving freedom from sin, his peace, his eternal life, his laws put into our minds, written in our hearts and sealed in his blood. He created men and women as unique beings capable of communication with him. It is our entire self that reflects the image of God, with the ability to reflect his character in our faithfulness, love, loyalty, forgiveness, and mercy. We have the ability to reflect his perfectness. David cries out to Jesus in Psalms 4:1, O Yeshua, or Jesus, that Yeshua is his name in Hebrew, you have declared me perfect in your eyes. Because man and woman were made in God's image and likeness, we share many of his characteristics that provide each one of us a solid basis for our self-worth. With all that he gives to us through his covenants, we learn that financial wealth is not the treasure of our existence, but rather that the treasure is our life experience itself. Abundance is financial, but it encompasses more than just our finances. Abundance is also about self-worth. Loving ourselves, loving God, loving others, loving this planet we live on, that we have been given responsibility for. We have to understand that our self-worth, our abundance, is not based on possessions, achievements, physical attraction, or public acclaim. Matthew 6:31. Jesus said very clearly, so don't worry at all about having enough food and clothing. Your heavenly Father already knows perfectly well that you need them. We are worthy to wake up fully at this set time when the whole world is asleep. By criticizing or downgrade ourselves or others, we are critiquing what Jesus has made and the abilities he has given to each one of us. The absence of faith and love leads to fear, greed, jealousy, and negativity, which is malcontent. That places us back into the darkness, back into that sleep mode. This is no time to look back with regrets of what we could have, should have, would have done. It is time to forgive ourselves immediately. Forgive others and move forward. We need to shift our consciousness to the now, to take stock of our lives and use the appreciation of our true abundance as a springboard to bounce us out of this sleep. We know of this sleep, for we read of the 10 virgins who are asleep when Jesus comes. But 5 of them had enough oil for their lamps to take them through to the rapture, and oil is radiant energy. Does our spirit bear witness to the beauty around us? The blue of the sky, the white of the clouds, the purest and most perfect colors, and allow that energy to build into our souls. When we were coming in today, it was cloudy. When we left, everything was white. About 10 miles out of the city, the sky cleared. You could see the sun come out, and it was just like, wow, look at that. You know, from being almost in darkness, all of a sudden the sun is shining. You can see the white fluffy clouds going by, and it was beautiful. And just to feel that sun and see that light, it's like a groundhog coming out of his hole. You know, it's we need to really be able to see these things. That is energy. When we see the light and we see things clearly like that, that's energy. And if we can take it in, it will give us energy. It will fill us with that energy. And it builds up our souls. Can we soak in the soft energy of the sunlight, the sky, the clouds, see them as expressions of the same force? An ocean of radiant energy? Look closer. This energy radiates through the whole universe, including each one of us. We are so blessed. We need to take that malcontentment to the curb and keep it there. Because we want to wake up. We want to wake up and be there when Jesus comes. We want to say, yes, we will be there. We're going with you, Jesus. And the source is, of course, Jesus. There are times in our lives when we gain a temporary awakening, gaining access to higher and truer levels of reality that is normally hidden. And it's not unusual. Between 1/4 and half the population experiences these awakenings, ranging from low to high. Our aim should be to make these awakenings permanent. This waking up transforms our perceptions, our experiences, transforms our relationships, and it affects society as a whole, even the world. And that's what we're here to do. In the sleep mode, it is easy to perceive the world as a dreary, inanimate place, and ourselves as separate entities, resulting in continual psychological discord inside us, seeing only the conflict and disorder. Warfare, destruction, oppression has rocked humanity into a troubled and restless sleep. Each person is an entity inside his or her brain and body that looks at a world that is out there. Other people and the world, always separate. Our normal consciousness is a particular kind of mental structure. In the awakening experiences, the structure dissolves, but it usually reforms soon after. How can we make this permanent? The mold of the structure must be broken so it cannot reform. In our covenants with Jesus, we have 10 covenants, we have hundreds of promises that He has given to us. Even all the promises that are enfolded into the covenants. He has provided us with grace and abilities to reach higher states of consciousness that are actually natural and normal. It is our normal consciousness that is abnormal, or rather subnormal. Fear, greed, and jealousy has inhibited our joyous quest for abundant living, allowing the ego to become overly developed. Its boundaries have become too strong, and its self-servient ability has mutated into the chaotic discontentment, or we could call it the malcontent, that runs through our minds when our attention isn't occupied. This overdeveloped ego is the root cause of many of the social dysfunctions the world is encountering, and it has gotten worse and worse as we go on through the years, generation after generation. This is not abundance. Abundance for all is the natural order of our universe. That's how it is made, to always be expanding, always be expanding. And that includes an abundance of good health, abundance of love, abundance of joy, and financial abundance. Take a moment and compare our abundance today to just a few hundred years ago. Our clothing, food, shelter, lighting, and heating. We have electricity, natural gas, transportation, recreation. Can you imagine if we didn't have a vehicle and had to travel 50 kilometers, which is about 35 miles? We'd have to probably have a stagecoach and at least have 2 teams of horses ready for us to go. And we wouldn't get here in the time that we have.
Yeah, we have to leave a lot earlier.
That's right, we'd have to leave a lot earlier.
So you're saying we have an abundance of abundance.
We do, we really do. Assistance programs, it is truly amazing. If we dropped back in the 1800s, we would be, we'd have to learn how to harness horses again. Hook them up to the wagon.
And hunt.
And hunt, yes.
You'd have
That
to
would-
stay overnight too, because to get to Calgary from Edmonton on the stagecoach was weeks.
Oh, that would take weeks, and can you imagine to
You
get
have to
from,
stop all the time.
yeah, from Edmonton to Winnipeg? All the rivers you'd have to cross, and they came on with ox carts, with oxen.
Yeah.
Oh, we are blessed. We are
We
blessed
are.
beyond measure. We really are. So why do so many feel such a lack of abundance, even lack of hope?
No identity.
It is identity. It's a little more than identity. The problem arises in our subconscious mind and cellular memory going back hundreds, even thousands of years. Our ancestors may have been cold, hungry, sick, poor, lonely, and it is in some degree imprinted on our souls. And there's another thing here too that it can be, because those familiar spirits, they go from generation to generation, and they can also impact our thinking and our actions too. So it all kind of rolls up in that there is things against us that we need to recognize that is below in our subconsciouses, as well as what's around us that you cannot see.
Yeah, familiar spirit can attack your children.
Yes.
If you don't let your parent rest, then their familiar, well, even if you do, their familiar spirit can still be around, actually. Their familiar spirit that Satan gave them
Yes.
can still be in your dwelling or attacking you.
Yes, it can be, and it does.
Yeah, that happened to one girl, and she saw her grandma's familiar spirit, because the grandma was sent to rest in peace, but they didn't want her to rest, but we did that. And so the familiar spirit was attacking the daughter. And when she spoke the word of God, it disappeared.
That's good. We really need to be able to send that familiar spirit, because it doesn't belong where it is. The person has passed away, so it no longer has the right to be there. So we can see that many of us carry a poverty consciousness with us, especially if we're not aware of these familiar spirits. This fantastically real world we live in is perceived as a shadowy reality. Too much weight, too much darkness. Whenever you have these demons around, it brings in way too much darkness. There's also the desensitizing mechanism that switches our attention off to the life, harmony, and oneness of the world, and the all-pervading spirit force that generates those qualities. We do not have a sense of connection to the creation or the creator, and that leaves us isolated, alone, and disconnected, walled off from the world around us. Trapped, you could say, behind walls. That is the enemy's walls, too. This poverty consciousness creates a basic sense of anxiety within our mind, and at the same time, the malcontent creates a constant disturbance inside us, so that our being is never still or peaceful, as it is negative, creating worries and problems. Vendetta, revenge, and vengeance is part of all that, and we know that vengeance belongs to Jesus. It is not ours to carry, it's not ours to hold on to, or use it against others. We lose touch with the natural happiness and well-being we were created to have. In the most basic kind of awakening experience, our normal shadowy vision of the world is transformed. A new dimension of reality, switching from black and white to color, Suddenly brighter, more colorful, more intricate, more depth and perspective. The natural world being more powerfully there. This clarity of vision beautifies every object, even making us new in this new world around us. In higher degrees of intensity is found a sense of how things are alive. Normally looked upon as one-dimensional, they take on a new kind of depth. It's like putting on 3D glasses when you're at the IMAX. And you look up and all of a sudden you have half the ocean in your lap.
Yeah.
And so that's how we should be seeing things. Of course, we're going to need to be able to move more quickly out of the way to watch where we are. The clarity of vision beautifies every object, even making us new, yes. In higher degrees of intensity is found a sense of how things are alive, normally looked upon as one-dimensional. They take on a new kind of depth, a new kind of being, radiance even that connects us to those objects, giving us a sense of meaning, a sense of harmony and loving kindness, and giving us a sense that our Creator is there. He is here with us. He is here in us, giving us the sense that all is well. And that's how we're supposed to be walking all the time, that all is well. There is a feeling of being lifted up by this power. There's a fellow that was on a train when the whole compartment flooded with light. He felt that all was well for mankind. All men were shining, glorious beings who in the end would enter incredible joy. He was probably transported into the future, possibly the kingdom. There was a sense of compassion for other people, other living beings, the world as a whole. The walls of the ego, that poverty mentality, begins to melt away as we move beyond separateness and so begin to experience a shared sense of being with other people. We begin to realize our common identity with them and so become able to feel with them. We feel their joys and suffering as our own. Powerful awakening experiences bring us into this mode, Ephesians 4:15-16. We lovingly follow the truth at all times, speaking truly, dealing truly, living truly. That's integrity. And so become more and more in every way like Jesus, who is the head of his body, the church. Under his direction, the whole body is fitted together perfectly, and each part in its own special way helps the other parts, so that the whole body is healthy and growing and full of love. And it is lay down. This is the time of the new moon. It is a time where we can lay down this poverty mentality, where we see it attacking in our lives. I know I certainly seen it from very young. When I look back, I could see, where the crops didn't come in, where the cattle went to market and they didn't bring much. There was stores in the town, and it's a good thing there was, because a lot of times they carried the farmers over on credit for the few groceries. The flour, the salt, the sugar, just the basic things that were needed for the farm. But things like that, it really attacked a person's worth and also their well-being. It was like a heavy weight. I remember one time we were going to go into town when I got home from school, and because Dad wanted to buy nails. Well, I got home from school, and I remember this. There was an old building by the corner of the garden, and it had been there, I don't know how long, for years. And what we ended up doing was taking that apart and pulling the nails out of that building to use those nails, because there was no money for nails. So you see, there's things like that, as you look back, you may see things in your life where these things happened. And you begin to realize, hey, that did get a hold of me. That was a shock. It was a trauma. I was expected to go to town and get a chocolate bar, at least a sucker, at least bubble gum. And you know how young children, and I think I was only about 8, maybe 8 or 9, not much more than that. So when you look back, you can probably see where things like that have come up in your lives. As we move into high-intensity awakening experiences, all of these characteristics intensify and new ones are added to them. We become aware of the presence of a spirit force in the world, pervading all things and the spaces between them. This force makes so-called inanimate objects alive. The Word of God gives us an example of how He sees His creation. Psalm 98:8. The waves clap their hands in glee, and the hills sing out their songs of joy before God. For He is coming to judge the world with perfect justice. And if you'll notice, the ocean and the hills and the mountains, they know His plan. They know He's coming to judge the world with perfect justice. Isn't that interesting? They know that. And we will go through the mountains and we'll look at those mountains. Oh, they're beautiful. They're just beautiful. And we don't have any clue that they're actually alive. And that they're in joy because Jesus is coming to judge the world with perfect justice. Everything around us, that is a situation of everything around us. That's everything around us. All we have to do is deal with these demonic forces that attack us, the things that come down through the generations, the things that we do not see. We are very blessed to have discernment where we do go to the assembly weekly. There is a great deal of discernment, and there's other, you go on the internet, look things up. Look for churches, look for assemblies, look for congregations that have this so that you know a little more of what there is out there. It seems so dreary, but it isn't. It is marvelous. It is wonderful. It is something that, it's there. It is there. And we can't afford to ignore it. We don't want to do that. We want to be one of the 5 virgins who have that radiant energy in us. Because it can be a sense of bliss, extraordinary joy. And not because of something, just because it's there. It's there. It's a natural condition of being. Because Jesus is in us. He is in us. We do communion daily. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. It just depends on what we're doing. But our DNA is being turned into Jesus' DNA every time we do communion. Our DNA is becoming more God DNA. Inside of us, right down to our DNA. Wow. Another interchange takes place in this higher thinking. A kind of identity shift. And couldn't we really use an identity shift? We realize that the ego, the self, the poverty mentality, malcontent, we always thought that was our true self. That's not us. Isn't that a relief to know that that is not us? Oh, we can get rid of it. Stamp on it. Kick it to the curb. I've heard that a few times and it kind of stuck in my brain. That is not our true self. The never-ending worries, the wants, a kind of limited and false shadow self. It isn't us. A sort of imposter that has taken over our psyche. We need to become a more stable, deep-rooted, expansive self, not being damaged by rejection and does not constantly hanker for attention and free from oppressive anxieties. That would be like being in heaven. That would be like walking in heaven, seeing, I've heard that the flowers up there are just awesome, just beautiful. Huge flowers, colors that you would never think about. Wow. Boy, we're blessed. Take your first step. Appreciate and meditate on what you have. The practice of meditation is natural. It is an effective method of transcending ordinary consciousness. Almost every culture over the Eurasian landmass has developed a form of it over the last thousands of years. Does that leave our minds open to the devil? Depends on your words. The shorter the word, the better. Being more like the working of the Spirit. A word like God or love. Fix this word fast to your heart so it's always there, come what may. And with this word, you can suppress all thoughts of worry, all thoughts of malcontent. There are hundreds of different techniques. They all follow the same basic principle. Quiet the mind. Slow down that chattering, that noise, it's thoughts that continually whiz through until eventually they fade away to experience a state of mental stillness or pure consciousness. Pure consciousness, no more generational stuff that comes down through. Stand apart from the flow of all thoughts and sensations and just observe them as they rise and pass away. Do not be carried away by the flow. Only be a detached witness to it. And I have watched some videos too, and what they say there is when you get into a situation and you have a way of speaking out before you think, take 10 deep breaths from your stomach, right from your bottom of your belly. Take 10 deep breaths and just breathe, because this will stop the fight or flight thing that hits. When something hits you hard and you want to retaliate, 10 breaths deep from your stomach can stop that the words that would come out that you cannot take back. So that's interesting too. I've been trying that, but boy, I just practice it when I don't need it, and then when I need it, it kind of. But I know it does work. I've tried it. So be carried away by the flow and watch it, but not by the situation. Gain insight into the workings of your own mind. Become aware of how temporary mental and emotional states are. Disidentify with the flow. Realize the true self is distinct from these thoughts and feelings that get out of hand. And meditation reduces heart rate, blood pressure, it treats hypertension, cardiovascular diseases, stimulates the immune system. We could all use some of that. Reduces chronic pain, yes, in knees, elbows. Helps alleviate asthma and even aids recovery from cancer. Psychological benefits, reduced anxiety and stress. Helps people overcome insomnia, depression, alcoholism, and drug addictions. And what about food addictions? That's something too that we can use the meditation, work with that. Regular meditation increases well-being, more positive thoughts, lower levels of cortisol, which is a hormone linked to stress, less activity in the amygdala, the part of the brain linked to fear and anxiety, experiencing less confusion, shock, and anger. Benefits are greater than Prozac and Valium, and you don't have all those chemicals in your system that you have to get rid of. Meditation has just as powerful effects on the spiritual level as well. It brings a gradual, permanent change of being. Its ultimate aim is to tame that ego mind, to permanently quiet its thought chatter and move past our normal separateness and ego isolation. Even if this only happens to a degree, it is accompanied by identity shift. It is a start. We can move forward. Your center of gravity shifts to a deeper self. Why does meditation have this awakening effect? It has the effect of intensifying and stilling our inner energy, our life energy, the non-physical energy of our being. And we need that. It is not the energy that we fuel the body with. This is the energy used by our mind to think, concentrate, and truly perceive the world around us and process that information. It flows through our bodies to the different organs and structures of the body and has the job of keeping them healthy. In normal life, there is a continual outflow of life energy. It is drained away by the tasks and chores that continually occupy our attention and the constant processing of sights, sounds, and smells around us. And as well, as if that were not enough, the information that comes to us through the media and the conversation with others. And there's been a lot of political upheaval too, so that takes a lot of life energy expended. It's also expended through emotions when circumstances or our own thoughts trigger negative feelings of offense, hurt, anger, guilt, resentment, bitterness, or jealousy. And that's all part of malcontent. But meditation can halt this outflow. As we meditate, we no longer give our attention to tasks. And you know, Mary and Martha, Jesus said, Mary has chosen the best thing, to sit at his feet and learn, where Martha has not chosen what is the best, because she was upset and there was a lot of things going on around her and she was not able to cope. So it's with meditating, we don't have such a drive. Even for myself, cleaning up the cupboards, cleaning the top cupboards, always washing those top cupboards, keeping them clean. Washing off the honey, doing that sort of stuff. And sometimes there's too much attention given to that. So as we meditate, the information we process through our surroundings is reduced to a trickle. As a result, after meditation, there is an inner concentration of our life energy. It is concentrated and intensified rather than dispersed and dissipated. And this generates an awakened state of consciousness. When we see the world around us as a half-real, one-dimensional place, our mind monopolizes our psychic energy, leaving none available for open, receptive, and present-centered awareness. In meditation, we ignore the automated structure of consciousness that produce the chatter. Thus, they weaken and fade away eventually. And this frees up the energy they formerly monopolized. This energy transforms to perception, where we can use it to really see objects and phenomena around us rather than glossing over them. There's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, we can look around and see people, but there's a lot more out there than just people. There's a lot of spiritual stuff out there, and by meditation, you can actually begin to see a little bit more and know what's going around you. We gloss over a lot of stuff. Energy formerly bound in emotive spasms, ego defense, fantasy, and fear can be translated into the delight of present-centeredness. In meditation, we take back the psychic energy that is normally used up by the poverty consciousness. The desensitizing mechanism no longer needs to function, so the soul is at peace. And Jesus said, "You will prosper as your soul prospers." Awakening experiences occur when there is a more intense than usual concentration and a greater than usual stillness of life energy inside us. Waking up. We do need to permanently wake up to live in a higher state of consciousness, permanently altering the structure of our psyche so that the mold of our normal consciousness is not able to reform, permanently transforming our consciousness by taking on the new man and leaving the old man behind. That's what we're supposed to do. We have the freedom to intensify and still the energy of our being if we so choose. This usually means closing down or at least reducing the outflow of some of the channels where our life energy leaks away and permanently stilling some of the constant disturbances of thought, desire, and emotion that take place inside us. This creates a new kind of psychic organization inside us and a new distribution of psychic energy. You might think, how can I do this? Jesus gave this advice to Israel. This day I call the heavens, this is Deuteronomy 9. This day I call the heavens, said Yeshua, and the earth as witnesses against you that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children live, and that you love the eternal your God. Listen to his voice and hold fast to him. For the eternal is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
It's Deuteronomy 30, verse 19.
Thank you, Robert. That's Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. This blessings and cursings, this is kind of interesting too. We talked a little bit about this, where people can say, they think they're blessing you, they say, take care. And then, you know, you don't want to take care, because at the new moon, that's when we turn it all over. So it's something that it's a good idea to, you don't have to say anything there, but it's a good idea to declare that you do not take any more care. You've got enough to lay down on the new moon as it is. But it is something that a lot of people don't understand. There's a lot of things there that we allow to go into our minds and hearts, and it's not helping us. A little more stuff we have to get rid of. You could say that when Adam and Eve sinned against God, that the poverty mentality exploded. It is time to choose life, and life more abundant. Jesus gives the choice to choose life and death, and he even tells us, choose life. We can return to that naturally awakened state through the work of Jesus on the cross. That's our heritage. We have been given not only the freedom, but the empowerment to wake up. That's what he wants us to do. He wants us to wake up, to come up through the layers of that darkness, the layers of sleep that we have been put in for generations and generations. There's some prerequisites as well. One of the prerequisites of spiritual development is to control the appetites of the flesh. And we know that through the Bible. Its desires for sex, food, alcohol, sensory stimulation, laziness, material comforts, and luxury goods should not be allowed to run riot. Rule of the thumb, all things in moderation. Giving our body what it needs without being an entrenched pleasure seeker. And this process, it's a temporary one. It's a training we need to go through to transform our temple, so that we get to understand what moderation is. A degree of desire is natural, of course, especially on a physical level. It is completely natural to desire sex, food, or physical comfort. However, these desires are not to completely take over our being, simply because they're a distraction. And I've heard it said too that at this time, though we be married, you don't look at yourself as married as much as you look at yourself. You are married. However, you don't allow a lot of things to distract you from Jesus, because we need to be fully aware of Jesus and what he's doing, of our Heavenly Father. The path to spiritual development requires dedication and concentration. Also, out of control desires disturb our inner being like a storm blowing across the calm surface of a lake. Desires affect us on a mental, emotional, and physical level at the same time. These desires, when active, use up a lot of life energy. And we should talk about celibacy. Monastic traditions have always been abstaining from sex and attempting to become free of sexual thoughts and desires as a prerequisite of spiritual development. However, this can be an expression of aversion to the body, an unhealthy impulse to repress base sexual instincts. The reason why the practice of celibacy has been so widespread is simply because, if practiced in the right way, it can have a spiritual effect, helping to intensify and still life energy. Sexual energy is the most powerful force that moves through us, and so can consume a lot of our life energy. By managing to conserve this energy, there will be a massive inner intensification of life energy. Sexual activities and the thoughts and fantasies of sex use up a great portion of our vital force. When that force is conserved through abstinence, it becomes sublimated as spiritual energy. The problem is that it has to be done with discernment and insight. It is not just a simple matter of taking a vow of celibacy and trying to distract oneself from sexual thoughts every time they occur. One of the problems with the Christian tradition is that monks and priests usually aren't offered any methods of containing or transforming their sexual energies. This is important. They're expected to remain celibate through their own willpower. Celibacy itself does not make a person more spiritual. Rather than being channeled into a higher consciousness, the energy remains latent as sexual energy and has to express itself somehow. Case in point is the scandals involving the pedophile Catholic priests. And knowing this can help a lot of people that have been involved in stuff like that to be able to forgive things that have happened. As well, repression of sexual desires is likely to generate hostility and aggression towards other people in general, but particularly towards women, children, and the human body itself. And this celibacy does not have to be permanent. It can be a temporary energy-conserving measure to attain a higher level of wakefulness. Another area of permanent awakening is renunciation and detachment. We all here have experienced this. We have gone through the training process, denouncing the world and its ways and traditions. And a lot of us here have done that for years. We have detached ourselves from it when we begin to tithe, offer our first fruits, celebrate the weekly Sabbath on the 7th day, and keep the feast of the Eternal throughout the year. By renouncing the world, we are able to consciously cultivate a state of detachment in order to attain, conserve, and intensify the awakening experiences. It is a release from the tyranny of selfhood and from the dominance and energy monopolization of the lower impulses and psychological attachments that in many cases is fear of poverty, loss, and lack. A lot of that is fear of loss. Losing out. A prolonged period of intense turmoil can permanently dissolve attachments and so lead to a state of permanent wakefulness. This is a training process where we learn to free ourselves from attachments, to exist without them, and eventually reach a state of shalom, peace, wholeness, and well-being. Many of us have been doing this for years and only now understand that. It is interesting in the Christian tradition that detachment and asceticism traditionally lead to a state of illumination when first awakened to the reality of the divine. This is roughly equivalent to a medium level of wakefulness, featuring a heightened awareness of the phenomenal world, awareness of spirit force or the radiance of God, and a constant sense of joy. Some stopped there, but some went on to the dark night of the soul, a terrible phase of desolation and depression, of abandonment, of feeling being abandoned by God, even a wall erected that could not be scaled, feeling empty and arid inside, full of self-hatred and contempt for the world. However, this dark night of the soul is actually a process of further detachment, a last and drastic purging of the soul. All psychological attachments to external things have been broken, and now they have to break the attachments to themselves, to their own individuality and ego. If they do this, they will reach the final stage of the path less traveled, union or deification, when they just see God in the world, where they do not just see God in the world, but they become one with Him. And Psalm 27:4, this is what David said in his word. The one thing I want from God, the thing I seek most of all, is the privilege of meditating in His temple, living in His presence every day of my life, delighting in His incomparable perfections and glory. And that's what we all want. So be blessed with that, each one of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.